is you need to figure out a way to repurpose your sales and customer success and marketing folks to no longer be seen as just customer success and account managers and sales development and account executives. They can no longer be seen by those traditional titles. They now need to show up as teachers. They need to show up as consultants, as trusted advisors. That's the way they're going to earn their way into these relationships to have a significant, credible, effective presence in data center marketplaces when it comes to building awareness and staying with the prospects throughout the full buyer's journey and stacking the comparison of the different alternatives heavily in your company's favor. Hello, data center friends. Good afternoon. Maybe it's good morning. For some of you, it may even be good evening. I am Joshua Feinberg from DCSMI, the Data Center Sales and Marketing Institute. We are all about elevating the role of sales, marketing, and go-to-market professionals in the growth of the data center industry. Welcome to this week's Data Center Go-to-Market Sales Marketing Q&A live stream. Each week I answer a handful of the biggest challenges that you have raised that you're currently grappling with in your business. And this includes those of you that work for data center operators such as colocation, hyperscale, wholesale, edge, or modular, or perhaps you're part of a technology company that sells to or partners with data centers, or maybe you work in facilities or construction or real estate, or perhaps even an outsourced sales and marketing company that works in or around the digital infrastructure or data center industry. But either way, if you're looking to up your game, if you're looking to upskill, if you're looking to improve your role, your team's outcome, your company's outcome in the growth of this very exciting phase of the data center industry, you are for sure in the right place. So what's on the agenda for today? I'm going to start by looking at how liquid filtration companies' sales teams can network with prospects in data center marketplaces. Then I'll tackle the issue of how to explain risk management capabilities to data center builders, data center construction companies. Then we'll look at how to market and sell international business relations and consulting services related to international business relations to data centers. After that, we'll take a quick break for a message from our sponsor. Then we'll dive into what an account manager does at a public or hybrid cloud solution provider. We'll get into how to be top of mind when data center executives are choosing partners for decommissioning their data centers. And then we'll wrap up this week by looking at how a cloud migration and modernization consultants can identify innovative solutions and partners. Just one quick ask, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what you do in the data center industry. One other quick announcement to stay on top of upcoming shows, to be notified about upcoming shows and related resources, make sure that you are subscribed to the Data Center Sales and Marketing newsletter that you can sign up for directly on the DCSMI website at www.dcsmi.com. So without any further delays, let's jump into this week's first question. How can liquid filtration companies, the sales teams for liquid filtration companies, network with prospects in the data center marketplace? So how do sales teams at liquid filtration companies network with prospects in the data center marketplace? That's a fantastic question. And it really starts by first understanding what business your company truly is in. What do you actually do? What's the job to be done? Starting probably going back 10 or 15 years ago, there was a framework developed that eventually got popularized out of Harvard Business School by the late Clayton Christensen called Job to be Done. And what it helps technology-related companies, and by extension, facilities companies that work with technology companies like in digital infrastructure, it helps you to figure out what your company actually really does. Because believe it or not, some companies actually don't know the job that their company is actually hired to do. And by extension, what your prospective clients, what your new clients are foregoing, what they're essentially firing by hiring your company to do a specific job. So first understand what it is that your company really does. Then examine where you've been most successful. If you go to your website and you go to the case studies section, or you look at similar kinds of resources, similar kinds of success stories that you've gathered over the years, where have you been most successful? From that, you should be able to back into what those companies have in common and build an ideal client profile, an ICP. This identifies what geographic regions your ideal clients are located in, what company size they are. When it comes to data centers, people often think of megawatts, but sometimes square footage. But the reality is, when it comes to your sales team, you need to be able to map that into, for the most part, a head count at the particular company, just simply because most of the tools, especially LinkedIn, do their segmentation, their size segmentation based on the estimated number of employees. So where are they located? In other words, what geographic regions can your company sell to and service comfortably? What company sizes do you do best at? Is there a certain company size that's too big or too small? Is there a certain band or a wide band of company sizes that you can sell to? And in what industries do you tend to do best? Is it all data centers? Is it all outsourced data centers? Is it enterprise data centers? Are there certain industries of data centers that you tend to do better at than others? Only you can answer that question, but that'll help you define your ideal client profile. And then from there, figure out who the most important stakeholders are that you need to be building relationships with at those companies. For marketing and sales enablement professionals, or sales development professionals, even they'll call this a buyer persona. A buyer persona is a representation of a semi-fictional type of person that you want to be selling to or building relationships with based on actual research and some select educated speculation. The reason that buyer personas are so important is when you go out into the marketplace, there's a really good chance that not only does your company have direct competition and indirect competition that you're competing with when you get to the point that you're putting together a proposal or the deal is being finalized, but you chances are have a much larger field of companies that are competing for your prospects' attention. These could be publications, these could be events companies, these could be channel partners, these could be channel organizations. There's a lot of different messages that are competing for your prospects' attention. So the reason we build buyer personas is we need to get hyper specific about who these people are that we need to build relationships with and what they care about, what their biggest goals are that they need to achieve in order for them to get a promotion or a big bonus in their job, what their biggest challenges are, what their biggest struggles are, what's stressing them out, what's causing them to have to pull all-nighters, miss out on weekends and vacations away from their loved ones. When you get consensus on knowing that at a deep emotional level, it becomes much easier to build a strategy that's relevant to how companies are going to navigate and make major purchase decisions around liquid filtration. So with that in mind, once you have those personas, then you want to be incredibly mindful that the way people research and make purchase decisions is so different today than it was even as recently as 5 years ago. Back in the mid 2010s, CEB, Corporate Executive Board, what's now part of Gartner, did some research with Serious Decisions and Salesforce, and they found that about half of a typical buyer's journey was over before sales contact, before your prospects wanted to spend time with someone from your sales team. It was about half over. That wasn't too bad. However, take a decade of digital transformation that was really accelerated during the lockdowns in the early 2020s, and we're now to the point where 83% of a typical buyer's journey is over before sales contact. All of the researching, comparing options, and evaluating pricing happens when you're not in the room. No one from your company, no one from your sales team is present when all of this is happening. And this is an enormous problem if your company is using an outdated sales and marketing playbook from 10 years ago, because your buyers have moved on. The buyers are now in the driver's seat. Your company is no longer in the driver's seat. And the way you get back into that conversation set, that consideration set, to be relevant, to earn your place onto the short list, is by recognizing that they don't want to speak with salespeople early on anymore. However, your future clients, they're learning. They're learning from other people. They're learning from teachers, trusted advisors, subject matter experts, and thought leaders. So that is your goal, is you need to figure out a way to repurpose your sales and customer success and marketing folks to no longer be seen as just customer success and account managers and sales development and account executives. They can no longer be seen by those traditional titles. They now need to show up as teachers. They need to show up as consultants, as trusted advisors. That's the way they're going to earn their way into these relationships to have a significant, credible, effective presence in data center marketplaces when it comes to building awareness and staying with the prospects throughout the full buyer's journey and stacking the comparison of the different alternatives in heavily in your company's favor, ensuring that you've earned the seat on their side of the table during the early and the middle stages of the buyer's journey, ensuring that your company is on the short list. And in some cases, if you do a phenomenal job with this content and sales enablement and educational events where you educate and build trust at scale, kind of like what you're watching right now, if you do a phenomenal job with that, in some cases, you may completely neutralize all of the competitive alternatives on the shortlist. So the shortlist collapses to one option, your company. So if you're serious about your company's liquid filtration solutions being more widely received in today's highly competitive data center marketplace, and you want your sales team to be using the playbook that's aligned with how your buyers want to buy, this is what I would encourage you to do. Think about how you can reframe your entire sales and marketing approach to be focused a lot more on providing value up front, providing education up front, and using these time and resource investments to drive everything you're going to be doing going forward. Next question is, how do we explain risk management capabilities to data center builders? How do we explain our company's risk management capabilities to data center builders, data center construction companies? The most important thing to recognize is data center construction companies, data center builders are really not going to be interested in hearing about your capabilities until they're pretty far along in their buyer's journey. This is something that is pretty much universally messed up by nearly all marketers and sellers in the data center marketplace, because they built this playbook 10 years ago, and that was the last time it was updated. Can you imagine if a data center stayed static and the servers were using the same chips and the same kind of drives and the same operating system and the same applications from 10 years ago? Crazy, right? Like, how could that possibly be? But in most ways, the way that companies are approaching their go-to-market playbook is massively, massively out of alignment with how your buyers want to buy. There's been so many changes in buyer behavior over the last 10 years to get us to the point now where most of your typical buyers, even for things as like risk management capabilities, risk management, advisory, solutions, consulting, whatever you want to call it, is going to be researched and compared and purchased largely this way. Because in the old days, which was as recently as 10 years ago, there was still an opportunity for your sales team to have a significant presence as your ideal clients were going through all of the research and comparing options and evaluating pricing. Those days are gone. Your buyers almost certainly now prefer a much more self-driven drivers, where they're in the driver's seat for most of the buyer's journey. So when it comes to risk management, of course, you need to know what business you're in. You need to have a well-defined job statement or job to be done. And if that's a new concept, definitely loop in whoever in your company is a product manager or wears the hat or takes on the role of a product manager, and ask them, what is the actual job that our company is hired to do when clients hire us? You should also, in the same context, go back and look at your case studies where you've been most successful. That will help you craft a ideal client profile to narrow down the field of who you want to be building awareness with. And when you have that ideal client profile documented, their industry, their location, their company size. Then you go about building a targeted account list, it's sometimes called an ABM or account-based marketing list. And from there, figure out who the stakeholders are at those companies that you need to build a relationship with. In most cases, risk management within the data center, at the minimum, going to likely include a CFO. It could include a CTO. It could include a CISO, a cybersecurity officer. In some cases, a large enough company may actually have a risk management officer or a vice president of risk or something like that. But when it comes to explaining your capabilities, if the first contact that you have with someone is asking you to explain your capabilities, you got in there too late. Because by the time someone like a CFO or a CISO or a risk officer or someone is asking that question, they're likely near the very end of their buyer's journey at like what Gartner would say the 83% point, where 83% of researching and comparing options and evaluating pricing has already taken place. So if your company, no one from your company had a foot in the door in that first 83% and you're getting that question, obviously you still want to answer that question. You want to have great resources on your website, great product marketing, text, images, video content that touches all the emotional triggers and everything that your buyers are interested in hearing about when it comes to risk management. But the reality is, what's much more important is that we understand those buyer personas well enough to earn a seat at the table during the first 83% of the buyer's journey, during the awareness stage, during the consideration stage, when they know that there's a goal that they're trying to figure out around risk management, when they know there's something that's driving them nuts, that's stressing them out to no end about risk management. Your company needs to make a decision at like a CEO level or a very, very strategic level that you want to be seen as the go-to experts in your space. Because if you're just selling a transaction, if you're just selling a commodity, this is a really difficult way to be building a business in the world that we live in right now. So it's essential that you, your team, your customer success, your sales team, your sales development, your marketers, everyone that's client facing needs to be seen as teachers and trusted advisors and consultants and subject matter experts. And the more advanced folks in that capacity need to be seen as thought leaders. And even early on, your relatively entry level talent, they should be consuming all of this great thought leadership content, all these great educational resources that you put out. So even if that person isn't capable of being an author or contributor in the first 6 months or a year, 18 months, whatever it is that they're working at your company, at the very minimum, they can be a great concierge. They can be a great tour guide of all the great resources that you have when they're dealing with early and middle stage prospects. So at a high level, it's not enough anymore to just be able to explain your risk management capabilities to the buyer personas at these builders. You need to do that, but that's just, that's barely the minimum requirements. For today to be effective, you need to figure out a way to earn your way in as early as possible in the buyer's journey in these formative stages, when they're figuring out what their criteria is, when they're figuring out what they're going to use to evaluate all the other risk management solutions that are in front of them. So you can be seen as the teachers, the educators. You can be seen, and you use that essentially to build massive amounts of trust. So you're not only answering the questions that you know that they have because you've done your buyer persona research, but you're anticipating what that particular person at a data center builder wants to know next. And because you're able to do that, you're able to proactively give them that information that helps to dramatically accelerate the sales process, earns you an enormous amount of loyalty. There's typically about 24 or so touch points between complete stranger and purchase decision. A lot of the industry analysts put that number at 28 right now. So the question is, what are you going to do to be in on as many of those 28 touch points as possible? Because by default, a lot of companies in the data center industry, they're spending an enormous amount of their budget on field marketing, on big national conferences and everything like that. And that's good for 1 or 2 or maybe 3 touch points if you do that a couple times a year. But what about the other 22 or 25 touch points? Do you really think that the risk officer, that the CFO, that the CISO, whatever it is, the COO at a data center builder is waiting till next year's conference to keep researching this? They're in the driver's seat. They're asking questions all day long. They're asking Google and Siri and Cortana and Copilot. They're posing questions on LinkedIn. They're asking questions on Slack channels with their peers. They're sending text messages to their peers. They're doing all kinds of stuff. So your goal is to be omnipresent, to be present everywhere, where they just can't turn around. They can't go anywhere and turn around without encountering your great subject matter expertise, your great content. Because by default, what's typically happening is your salespeople are badgering them with very selfish asks. When can we put time on the calendar to give you a demo? When can we put time on the calendar so I can come in and pitch you? Like 95% of the people that could be a great fit aren't ready for that yet. So unless you want to turn off and burn your bridges with 19 out of 20 people, take to heart what we're talking about here. Figure out how your company is going to show up early and often, and use content, use teaching, use being seen as a trusted advisor to educate and build trust with your company's most important stakeholders when it comes to the risk management solutions that you provide to data center builders. So next up, how do we market and sell international business relations and consulting services to data centers? So your company is in the business of helping their clients with international business relations. How do you market and sell this to data centers? That's a fantastic question. And it's a challenge that I see coming up with increasing frequency. As our world becomes more connected and our economy becomes more globalized, there are a massive amount of companies that are in Europe and APAC and in North America, Latin America, all over the place that want to figure out a way to be doing business not only in their own region and on their own continent, but want to be doing business in other regions around the globe. So there is a significant business for companies that are able to help with international business relations and localization and customs and local feet on the ground and everything else that goes with taking a company from being national to slowly but surely making them multinational and then eventually global. So what can you do to build an effective go-to-market playbook for the data center industry to scale the growth with this kind of business? The first thing is it's going to be very centered around your capabilities, your skill set, and your expertise. Probably goes without saying, but like if you're going to help companies get into Latin America, you need expertise in all of Latin America. If you're saying, well, no, we'll help people get into Belize and Colombia or Brazil or something like that, you're being a lot more specific. And all of that is good. Just to be very, I don't want to say cautious, but be very methodical, very well defined, very precise about the kind of services that you're going to offer to your clients to make sure that you truly understand the local customs, that you have presence there, that you can shepherd them through all of this. So what it largely comes down to is, okay, so you know your capabilities. From there, you can set about building a ideal client profile of the kind of companies who would be a great fit for that particular kind of international business relations type of service. So let's say, for example, you're going to start by making this service available to companies in the US that want to do business in the data center industry in Brazil. So you have those capabilities. From there, you're using what I just mentioned to build out an ideal client profile. So you know the geographic region where your ideal clients are located. You should have a reasonably good idea of the company sizes that you want to target. Often in the data center industry, people think in terms of megawatts and square footage. The reality, though, is for anything tied to go-to-market, like marketing and sales development, sales enablement, you're probably going to end up using a database to be able to build an account list. And the most common database that you'll come across, and a fantastic one, is LinkedIn, like LinkedIn Sales Navigator and the LinkedIn Campaign Management Platform for ads. And that runs based on headcount, the number of employees that work at that particular company. So if you think your international business relations service is applicable to companies regardless of how big or how small they are, well, you could gloss right over the headcount that would go in your ideal client profile. But I work with enough companies in the space. I interview enough companies in the space for the podcast. And the reality is nearly all have some kind of defined band of what kind of company is too big and what kind of company is too small. So again, know the geographic region, know the size of the company, and know the business model or industry that that particular company is located in. Then from there, you can build out a target account list, a defined list of anywhere, usually from a couple hundred, usually a couple hundred, but it may be a few dozen companies, it may be a few thousand companies. For this particular use case, we're probably talking about a few thousand companies. Maybe it's a couple hundred companies in the US that want to do business in Brazil. And then from there, you want to figure out, by the nature of what you provide, who at that company would be most interested. Not who a specific person or even a specific job title, but a job function. Because from there, we need to build a buyer persona for that particular person, which usually is a collection or amalgamation of a couple different roles or a couple different job titles that's tied to how that person perceives a company or an opportunity like the one that you're putting in front of them. So buyer personas are a semi-fictional representation of an ideal client based on actual research and some select educated speculation. Some limited educated speculation. I always tell people, if you have internal input from people that are on your team that have been doing this a while, maybe that's good for 20% of the input, but most of a buyer persona, like 80% of it, should come from actual research. And when you get done researching and building out what should be at least 1 or 2 pages of detail on what the person's biggest goals are and what their biggest challenges are that are especially relevant to what you do with international business development, international business relations. Once you understand those biggest goals and challenges, then you basically want to build a content strategy that allows you to stay with that individual throughout their full research and comparing of options and evaluating pricing throughout their full buyer's journey. And this is especially important because today, most buyers no longer want to spend much time with your sales team until they're at the absolute end of their buyer's journey. The way we earn our way in early is to be seen as a teacher, as a trusted advisor, as a consultant, as a subject matter expert, as a thought leader. And in order to do that effectively, we need to be hyper specific about who they are and what they care about. So the framework for a buyer persona becomes incredibly important. So you're publishing videos and podcasts, having great downloadable content and planning guides and checklists, and of course, educational events like this, live streams and webinars, and in some cases, in-person events where the goal is to educate and build trust at scale in a one-to-many with people that look like they'd be a really good fit for what you want to do. Essentially, you're looking to earn a virtual seat at the table with that individual throughout their full buyer's journey, so that you have a chance to steer how they evaluate all of the different options. You're ensured a place on their short list. And if you do this right, in some cases, if you provide incredibly effective value that not only addresses their biggest goals and challenges, but anticipates everything that they're going to want to know between complete stranger and a purchase decision, like the 28 touch points, the better job you do at having a presence in those 28 touch points, the more likely it is that you'll actually neutralize all of the competitive options. The short list collapses down to one, which is your company, and you've won effectively by using educational resources and content and subject matter expertise to win out as by far and away the best option. So what it largely comes down to is at a very high level in your company, and small and mid-sized companies for sure, this is a CEO level initiative. You need to decide that your company's customer facing talent in marketing and sales development, account executives, customer success, that you no longer want them to be seen by their traditional conventional job titles. You want them to be seen as consultants and trusted advisors and subject matter experts, so that your company is in aggregate seen as the best go-to experts on the planet when it comes down to international business relations for anything and everything having to do with data centers in Brazil or Colombia or Argentina or Eastern Europe or whatever region that you decide to do this in. It would be the exact same playbook. But at the end of the day, recognize that your buyers are buying very differently today than they did 5 or 10 years ago. And in order to be effective at growing this kind of business around international business relations and consulting services for data centers, long before they get to the point that they know that they're going to hire someone for this, they're out researching. And the better job you can do at showing up early and often in a way that adds value and teaches and puts thoughts in their head about, Wow. Yeah, that's really interesting. I haven't given thought to that yet, but wow, I think it's highly relevant to us. The better job you can do with that, the more effective you're going to be at growing this kind of business. So that's exactly how I would approach that. And now we'll take a quick break for a message from our sponsor. The Data Center Go-to-Market podcast is sponsored by DCSMI, elevating the role of sales, marketing, and go-to-market GTM professionals in the growth of the data center industry. To stay informed about upcoming episodes, make sure that you subscribe to the Data Center Sales and Marketing newsletter on the DCSMI website that can be found at www.dcsmi.com. Again, that URL is www.dcsmi.com. Hey there, it's Joshua Feinberg from DCSMI, the Data Center Sales and Marketing Institute. We are all about elevating the role of sales, marketing, and go-to-market professionals in the growth of the data center industry. And you are watching the Data Center Go-to-Market Sales and Marketing Q&A live stream that we do each week, where we answer a handful of questions that are top of mind across the full go-to-market team, across the full data center ecosystem. Next question up is, what does an account manager do at a public and hybrid cloud solution provider? So your company, or you're curious about a company that does public and hybrid, that provides hybrid and public cloud solutions, what does an account manager do for that kind of company? That's a fantastic question. So an account manager at a cloud service provider, infrastructure as a service company, professional service company, and IT services, digital infrastructure, whatever you want to call it, the primary goal of the account manager is to keep your clients happy. Happy so that they are getting initial value, intended value, extended value, happy that they have a fantastic onboarding experience, happy that they're so delighted that they give you amazing reviews and get the digital word of mouth flywheel spinning really, really fast. And they become great for introducing to other opportunities to work together with your company, like cross sells and potentially upsells, and the risk of churn, where they would potentially leave your company, drops to near zero. That's essentially what an account manager does. The challenge is, in some IT related companies, especially solution providers that do public and hybrid cloud, there's two schools of thought on who account managers should report to. School of thought number one is they report into a head of sales or a chief revenue officer, which means that instead of worrying about being obsessively focused on net promoter score and providing a fantastic experience and figuring out the gaps and getting all of those gaps in front of a product manager so you can innovate and continue to iterate and make these super delighted clients, what ends up dominating that a lot of times when account managers report to a head of a vice president of sales or chief revenue officer is the cross-selling and the upselling dominate everything. And when that becomes so obvious and so transparent, the clients really don't want to spend that much time with your account manager to get problems solved, because they feel like every time they show up, they're getting pitched something else to buy. So there's some org chart decisions that you need to make depending on what you're actually prioritizing in your company. Or you want to have really sticky clients that love what you're doing and shout your praises from the rooftops and bring you fantastic digital word of mouth? Or do you want to try to squeeze every last dollar, pound, euro, whatever your local currency is, out of that possible client? And it's really hard to have your cake and eat it. It's really hard to achieve both of those objectives simultaneously. But like a quick back of the napkin observation is the role of account managers, or in SaaS companies, the role of customer success, can be dramatically impacted by who that individual, who that team actually reports into. Another thing to think about when it comes to the daily routines of account managers, AMs, or customer success, CS professionals, is in order for your company to be effective in today's self-propelled buyer's journey, where so many of your prospects and clients really want to be in the driver's seat. They don't want to talk to sales anymore till they're at the absolute tail end of the process. And they really want to do self-serve themselves. They don't want to have to be beholden to or dependent on an account manager. In order for your account manager, as with the rest of your go-to-market team, in order for them to have good positioning and good leverage, with that client, they really can no longer afford to be seen as focused just on the transaction and just on customer success and just on getting a deal closed or whatever it is. They need to show up as a subject matter expert, as a teacher, as a trusted advisor, as a consultant. For a couple of years now, I've been advising leaders of technology companies in IT services and digital infrastructure, and certainly in any kind of public or hybrid cloud or managed services scenario, to seriously consider giving your sales team and your account management team a makeover so that the positioning now comes across as like a big four consultant. So the interactions that prospects, your future clients have with your sales team, and the interactions that your current clients have with your account management team should be so up leveled, should be so insanely valuable that it feels like they're getting free consulting from one of the elite consulting organizations on the planet. Like, and by big four, I mean like PwC, EY, KPMG, or Deloitte, where your clients literally feel like they're getting free $1,000 an hour consulting or your local currency equivalent. That's so elite, so incredibly valuable, so next level that they really want to spend time with your sales team. They want to spend time with the account executives. They want to spend time with the account managers. When you're able to do that successfully, everything changes. The context changes, the ability to prescribe, to diagnose before you prescribe, the ability to get the right people at the table, the ability to educate and build trust, to be seen as a trusted advisor. All of those things start to fall into place. But it's super important to transcend this whole idea that your account managers, that your account executives are just focused on hitting a quota, are just focused on achieving a goal, a metric, a KPI that's focused on revenue. In order to really get a strong handle on what account managers can be doing for a company to bring it next level, it can't just be that they're a profit center for the company. They have to truly be loved by your clients, to the point where one of the top 5 reasons that they stay with your company is because they really get an insane amount of value from the time that they spend with your account managers on a regular basis, to the point where your delighted clients become an extension of your sales team with how they sing your praises from the rooftops. And how do you capitalize that even better? Well, your product team, your product marketers probably would love to do more case study interviews, feature some of these folks in panel webinars, panel events where you or someone from your team goes out to conferences and brings some of your most successful clients along and moderates a panel. Essentially, what you're basically looking to do is to take all the tremendous vibes and goodwill that you've built up by knocking it out of the park on account management and have those clients be your best spokespeople, because the credibility is so much more. I know a lot of companies that do something as basic as they'll take 15 or 20 people to a professional sporting event, like in the US, maybe to a baseball game or a football game, or certainly in other regions of the world where entertaining at sports events is a good playbook. And what they'll do is they'll mix it up. So of the 20 people they invite, like 4 of those 20 people are amazingly satisfied clients who love what your account managers are doing, and the rest are prospects. And by just kind of letting them spend the time mingling with each other and networking with each other, you'd be amazed the magic that your delighted clients can do, because you've put so much in the relationship bank account. Your account managers have built that up so much over time that they love to brag about the wonderful value that they get from working with your company when it comes to their public and hybrid cloud solutions, private cloud solutions, whatever, and other professional services that you provide for them. So that's what account managers do. That's what account managers could be doing. And if you're serious about taking your company to next level growth and doing all of these great things that help capitalize on digital word of mouth and getting your flywheel spinning faster so your satisfied clients become really effective promoters of your business growth in general, this is how I would recommend approaching the playbook for account management in a company that provides public and hybrid cloud. Next question. How to be top of mind? How can we be top of mind when data center executives are choosing partners to decommission their data centers? So how can your company be top of mind when data center executives are looking to decommission their data centers. This sounds really familiar. And I think I've actually, yeah, there was a company that came to me a couple months ago with a very similar kind of challenge. And what it largely comes down to is recognizing that whatever you've done for the last 5 or 10 years may not necessarily be what you need to be doing to grow this business going forward, because the way that people research and make purchase decisions has changed quite dramatically over the last 10 years. Corporate Executive Board CEB, that's now part of Gartner, in the mid 2010s found that about half of a typical buyer's journey was over before sales contact. I think at the time the number was 56%. So for most data center executives, there were 10 years ago or so in the mid 2010s, they were 56% of the way through their buyer's journey before they were willing to speak with someone from your sales team. So that wasn't too bad. Your sales team still got to spend a little less than half of the sales cycle, their research and decision-making process with them. Take into account another decade of digital transformation and the 2 or 3 years that most people spent working from home in the early 2020s. And this number has gone up like a rocket propelled, like rocket ship. That number, that 56%, jumped to 83%, meaning that 83% of a typical buyer's journey is now over before a data center executive wants to spend time with anyone from your company in a sales context. 83% of researching, comparing options, and evaluating pricing happens without you in the room. And the only way that you're going to earn your way back into the room is for your sales team and your account managers and your marketers to no longer be seen like traditional sales and marketing and account management people that are just focused on closing a sale and just focused on the transaction. How do you earn your way back in? How do you earn a seat at the table in today's self-propelled buyer's journey where the buyer is in the driver's seat? Well, we need to show up as teachers, as trusted advisors, as subject matter experts, as thought leaders, as consultants. And the way we do that is we get obsessively focused on understanding who these executives are, what their biggest goals are, what their biggest challenges are, and how we can share our insight that can help them do their job better. How we can provide fantastic educational content and educational events like this, live streams and webinars, and even offline versions of those, like breakfast seminars and lunch and learns and educational events where we can educate and build trust at scale. How can we do this in a way that helps these data center executives learn a ton about what they need to be thinking about when it comes time to decommissioning? How do we know what they care most about? Because we don't just guess, we do the research. We do the buyer persona research, and we find the consensus on what their biggest goals and what their biggest challenges are. And we use that to frame this entire initiative so that when we show up, we're not repulsing them. We're not getting repelled away. They actually want to spend time with your team because they see you as instrumental in helping to figure things out. That's the way to stay top of mind with data center executives when it comes to anything and everything having to do with decommissioning. From a tactical basis, yeah, sure, we need an ideal client profile. We need a targeted account list. We need to document and prioritize which is our primary buyer persona and our secondary buyer persona. We absolutely positively need a content calendar because we need great podcasts and great videos and great blogs. We need to really, really dive headfirst into educational webinars and events on a very, very regular cadence at the absolute minimum once a month. We need to focus on growing our reach so we're getting the right people to attend and participate in these events. We need to get really good at email marketing so we have a way to tightly segment who they are and what they care about, where they are on their journey. So we're anticipating what they want to know next and always adding value as opposed to just bugging them and nagging them for, hey, when can I come in and pitch you? Like, if you're just begging for meetings, that's not what they want. That's what you want. So get out of the selfish mode and focus on how you can provide value to them if you want to stay top of mind with the data center executives that are going to be most interested and most likely to have a data center commissioning project coming up in the coming weeks, in the coming months, even in the coming years. This is a long game. The companies that are winning aren't winning because they decided last week that, gee, maybe we should do a blog or host a webinar or something like that. They're winning because they've made a concerted effort over an extended duration of time that they want to be seen as the go-to experts in their space when it comes to anything and everything having to do with decommissioning. And here's the thing that most people don't think of. You likely know who your direct competitors are. Why? Because they torture your sales team when it comes to the proposal stage. But the reality is, you also likely have indirect competitors, companies that are a lot bigger or a lot smaller than yours that become a factor. And they may be in a different geographic region than yours, and they're itching to get into your backyard. In addition to your direct and indirect competitors, though, when it comes to the awareness and the consideration stages of the buyer's journey, which is a huge issue in the first 83% of the journey when you don't have a seat at the table, when you're not in the room anymore, what's incredibly important is that we're focused on education, that we're focused on trust building, and recognize that it's a completely different kind of competitor that you have that you may have never bumped into in the past. They're not selling decommissioning. They're providing educational content on decommissioning and perhaps a few dozen topics that are directly related to decommissioning. And these companies aren't necessarily in the business of recycling or moving or decommissioning. These may be media and events companies. So that's the mindset change that I'd encourage you to be thinking of. Instead of traditional marketing and sales, think of building a media company for your most important buyer persona that provides amazingly helpful educational content that completely dominates all of their researching and comparing options and decision-making process, and all of those 28 touch points that come between complete stranger and purchase decision. When you do this well, you're nearly guaranteed to be on the short list. When you do this world class, there will be some cases where they get to the end of the journey, they're 83% of the way in, and there's no one left on the short list except your company, because you've done this so outrageously well that your content, your trusted advisorship, your subject matter expertise, your events, your resources have completely knocked all of the other competitors out of consideration. That's the way to stay top of mind when it comes to keeping the right mindset, keeping the right brand impression with the data center executives that matter most when it comes time to big data center decommissioning projects. And that brings us to our final question for today. How can a cloud migration and modernization consultants identify innovative solutions and partners? So your company provides cloud migrations and modernization, and you want to know how to identify innovative solutions and how to identify potential partners. That's a two-part question. And the innovative solutions part and the innovative partners, I would argue, is probably two different distinct job roles within your company. The innovative solutions part maps, when you think about a typical go-to-market team that operates in and around the data center industry, there's 5 or 6 different roles, most of which you're likely familiar with, but may not have thought of in this context. On a typical go-to-market team, you have marketing, you have sales, you have customer success, often also referred to as account management. You have product managers. If your company is focused on partnerships, channel partnerships, you have a channel management team or channel managers, and then you have an executive sponsor. So 6 different kinds of roles: marketing, sales, customer success, product management, channel partnerships, and the executive sponsor that rolls all of this up together to the board level. The smaller the company it is, the more likely it is that you have one person who's wearing more than one of these hats at any given time. In larger companies, each of these roles are entirely separate teams, entirely separate departments. You could have anywhere from a few people to literally hundreds of people in some of these roles in Fortune 500 kind of IT companies. Let's Goldilocks it here. Let's go with the idea that your company is probably more mid-sized. Maybe you have anywhere from a few dozen to a few hundred employees. So there will be people in each of these roles. In some cases, the bench of talent may be deeper than others. But okay, so we have these 2 different things that we're trying to figure out when it comes to cloud migration and modernization. We're trying to stay on top of innovation solutions, and we're trying to identify potential channel partners. So the innovation solutions, that's the domain of your product manager. They're the ones that are constantly scouting for what's coming next. They're spending time with your clients. They're researching what's going on in the marketplace. They're doing competitive analysis. They're building battle cards. They're figuring out essentially what business your company should be in when it comes to developing or representing various products and services that have to do with modernization and cloud migration. So that's your CPO, your chief product officer, your product manager, potentially the first cousin of that, the product marketer. They're figuring out and communicating, what are the innovative solutions that are out there that are going to help your company, help your clients that have cloud migration and modernization projects. When it comes to identifying the best partners, that's the domain of your channel partnership team. And they're, depending on how many people work on this channel partnership team, you could have specialization of roles, or you could have one person wearing a couple of different hats. When it comes to, let's keep this super simple. Let's say it's one person wearing lots of different hats. So one person wearing lots of different hats needs to figure out, when they sit down and talk with others that are on the go-to-market team, especially the product manager who's out there identifying these solutions, you're trying to figure out who the best partners would be. If you have existing partners, you're likely trying to clone that, replicate that, and scale that, so you have a starting point of looking at your best partners. What do they have in common? Are they in a certain geographic region? Are there a certain company size? Are there certain platforms that they have in common? Are there certain business models or industries that they work in that they have in common? That will help you to essentially build an ideal client profile, what's often called an ICP, for your partners. Some people could even call it an ideal partner profile, an IPP. We'll keep this back at an adult level, an ideal partner profile, as opposed to an ideal client profile. But at the end of the day, we're looking to a single page document that helps to identify where they're located, that helps to identify how many employees headcount wise they typically have, because at some point your channel partner recruiters will be going out to use some databases, especially like LinkedIn Sales Navigator or something like that. And most of them run based on estimated headcount, number of employees in a company. So geographic region, company size, are there certain technologies or certifications or accreditations that they have that make them an especially good or bad fit? And are there certain business models or industries that they tend to be in that can make them an especially good fit? So once you've determined who your ideal partner is, then you can build a target account list or target partner list of anywhere from a couple dozen to a couple hundred, or maybe even a couple thousand potential partners that you want to build awareness with and gain consideration with and stay with throughout their full journey as they evaluate other companies to partner with. So your ideal partner profile, a target list of companies that you want to partner with, figuring out who the people are in those companies that you want to build relationships with at a high level, like figuring out a primary and a secondary buyer persona, the kind of role at that particular company for cloud migration and modernization. Again, it's going to vary tremendously depending on the nature of who your partners are, how big their companies are, how specialized these roles are. But in a really small company, it might be a CTO. In a mid-sized company, it might be a vice president of infrastructure. In an enterprise company, it may be an infrastructure engineer or manager or partner manager or something like that. The equivalent facing on their side that works with companies that want to partner with them. So again, this is going to vary depending on the size of your company, the size of the companies that you sell into, the region that you're located with. But at a high level, when it comes to building a business around cloud migration and modernization, I would recommend the person looking for innovative solutions be a different person than the person that's building channel partnerships. Obviously, if you're a startup and you're just a solopreneur at this point, or a really small team, it's possible that one person needs to wear more than one of these hats. But as long as your company has a minimum of a few handfuls of team members, you're almost certainly going to specialize, where a product manager is the one scouting for innovative solutions, a channel manager is the one scouting for channel partners. So you have your target account list, you have your buyer personas, you figure out what their biggest goals and challenges are for building educational content that attracts and nurtures and educates potential partners and gets them signed up and onboarded. And that's only 10% of the battle. We have potential partners. They've said, yes, I want to be a channel partner. Now you need to activate them and stay with them and support them, and recognize that the great part with channel partners is your fixed costs become variable costs, and CFOs and boards of directors love that. And you can hit all these crazy fragmented markets that may not be cost effective or time effective to hit with the direct sales force. The downside is your direct sales force works for your company 40, 50 hours a week, 100% of the time. Your channel partners may have a relationship with 10 or 20 different companies, and you're only getting a small slice of the time. So you have to work hard to stay on their radar screen. So even once they're signed on as a partner, that's only half of the battle. So there's channel account managers, there's channel account marketers, there's basically people that deal with the potential partners, and there's people that deal with partners once they're signed on and help them get trained and help them co-sell, help sell through them, essentially coaching them and helping them to identify opportunities among their existing client base. So if you're serious about growing your business around cloud migrations and cloud modernization, and you're serious about identifying these innovative solutions and channel partners and using both of these as a way to add significant growth to your business in the coming years, I would give some serious thought about specialization of these roles. Obviously, make sure that there's great alignment and collaboration across your full go-to-market team, but recognize that these a lot of times are two distinctly different skill sets. The person who's the product manager usually needs to be more technical than the person who's the channel manager. So it makes sense that this would fall under the domain a lot of times of a product person, whereas the channel marketer, the channel salesperson, the channel manager tends to be better at identifying and nurturing opportunities, closing new channel partners, and activating and enabling these channel partners to go out and market and sell your company's solutions to their clients, and then figures out what the plan is going to be for post sales. How much is the channel partner going to be managing that? What kind of professional services should be sold around that? It's a whole separate business case that's quite different than identifying these solutions, the innovative solutions that you're going to represent. So those are some of the areas that I would give serious thought to for companies that want to get better at cloud migration and modernization consulting and identifying innovative solutions and potential channel partners. So that is the final question that we're going to be addressing in this week's Data Center Go-to-Market Sales and Marketing Q&A live stream. I'm Joshua Feinberg from DCSMI, the Data Center Sales and Marketing Institute. We are all about elevating the role of sales, marketing, and go-to-market professionals in the growth of the data center industry to make sure that you stay on top of all of the new shows and new resources that we create over at DCSMI. Make sure that you sign up for the Data Center Sales and Marketing newsletter by visiting our website at www.dcsmi.com. Until next time, I wish you great success in growing your data center related business. Take care now. The Data Center Go-to-Market podcast is sponsored by DCSMI, elevating the role of sales, marketing, and go-to-market GTM professionals in the growth of the data center industry. To stay informed about upcoming episodes, make sure that you subscribe to the Data Center Sales and Marketing newsletter on the DCSMI website that can be found at www.dcsmi.com. Again, that URL is www.dcsmi.com.